Hello.
Hi.
So for our midterm, we watched all of the short films, and we decided to focus on comparing The Baby and 2 + 2 = 5. So really quick, like an overview of The Baby is it's about these two women. One of them is the mom to the baby, and they're going through the streets of Iran, and she's trying to figure out like how she can hide her baby, like someone can take care of it or whatever, while her parents come to visit, and it's just like very tense and realistic, kind of trying to like put you in her shoes.
So 2 + 2 = 5 also was focusing on issues in Iran, in the classroom of a schoolhouse, an all-boys school, where a new rule was established in the school that 2 + 2 = 5, and it focused on the boys' reaction to this new rule and the professor's reaction to this rule, kind of describing society as a whole in the terms of a classroom.
And through these two movies, which are very similar in the fact that they both take place in Iran, and they both are like so deeply rooted in social moral commentary of the country of Iran and the government and just the norms. That's why we decided to focus on both of them, and we think one is obviously more sophisticated than the other. So what we want to talk about is the fact that Baby is a little bit more sophisticated and more well done than 2 + 2 = 5, which was very overt and obvious in what it was trying to display. Like, these films are very similar, but we'll go into why we think The Baby's a little bit better.
So we rated The Baby a 7 out of 10, and we rated 2 + 2 2 + 2 = 5, 5 out of 10.
Equals 5.
Equals 5. So we're going to go through the reasons why we thought that The Baby was better done than 2 + 2 = 5. Yeah. So I guess we should start by talking about the social commentary that they both address. So through doing some research on the films and where they're taking place, what language it is, we found that The Baby was placed in Iran as well as 2 + 2 = 5. Both involve the oppression of society and the government. So in The Baby, it addressed the oppression of women and their societal norms and like their family rearing and societal expectations as a young woman. She had a baby. Her parents didn't approve. Her friends didn't approve. One of her friends even made the comment, like, I told you to get an abortion. Like, why didn't you get an abortion? And it really focuses on how these society's norms affect her and prevent her from living a happy life. She's very conflicted, and although she loves her baby, she can't reveal what she's done to her family. So it showed a lot about not necessarily how the government impacts these people, but how society and their norms impact these people from like a very personal and not very out there view. So we saw a real woman in the real life experiencing this oppression. And in 2 + 2 = 5, the social commentary is also on oppression, but the oppression of the Irani government on society as a whole, and how they are being brainwashed to believe things that aren't true through like violent force, guns, and murder. So they both had that really strong commentary on oppression of people in Iran. But we thought that Baby definitely did it in a more like not out there sort of way, and
Not as like in your face.
Yeah, not as in your face. And in 2 + 2 = 5 was very much very much like fake, and was making a mockery of the oppression that was being displayed in Iran.
Yeah, and like going off that, we talked about how both had different types of like internal and external conflict, which Elise talked about a little bit. So like when you think about both have kind of man versus society, where they're the protagonist kind of like fighting against society as the antagonist, and the oppression that like systemically has been forced against them. And then I think there's a lot of man versus self in both of them as well, and like psychological conflict where you have like the woman and the baby is really like trying to. I mean, she has this like weighing on her where her baby is like being treated as a burden because her family can't find out about it, and like she's back and forth over what she should do, and like she really is like kind of marginalized by like the society that she lives in, and like just like making the decision to like be a mom, or like you had said before about like aborting the baby. And even like the kid that does stand up, like I mean, it shows it in just like the fear in his face over whether or not to like stand up for what he believed in or go along and like just conform with like the authoritarian regime. And then also just like between people, like the friend who suggested that she like should have gotten the abortion, that her life would have been so much easier, just like clearly like her raising the child by herself without like the father involved in the life, which it doesn't mention him throughout the entire film, and like that's really interesting. Maybe he didn't know that it existed, I don't know, but there's that. And then like all of the classmates in 2 + 2 = 5 are like looking at him really angry that he's going to get them all in trouble, and so like the ones that conformed versus the one that was able to like stand up.
And going off of that, that kind of like leads us into who's the protagonist and who's the antagonist. So more obviously in 2 + 2 = 5, the protagonist is the kid who stands up and is singled out in front of the classroom. He is obviously going through this conflict of whether to conform to what his teacher and authority is telling him, and kind of what in his own self he knows is right versus wrong. And he chooses to stand up for himself even though he sees the guns, he sees what can happen when he goes against society. Like it's very clear that there's like fear instilled in all of these kids, and he still goes against it and sticks up for what is right despite the consequences. So he's the obvious hero, he's the obvious protagonist. Meanwhile, in The Baby, it's not as obvious. The woman is the protagonist and we're rooting for her, but there's no like clear resolution of like her conflict. Like it's obvious that she's oppressed and she's upset about like the norms that she's living in Iran, but nothing really happens. It's just like she's going through the motions and doing what she needs to do to survive, and I think that makes her the protagonist. But in that, I would say maybe like the social norms is the antagonist, because there's no clear character that is the antagonist.
Yeah, I think in both, the antagonist has to be, like, society and the government oppressing those involved. Like, although her conflict was with herself, it was conflict based off of the mold that she felt like she needed to fill. And same with 2 + 2 = 5. Like, there wasn't, like, a singular person who was the antagonist. It was the rules and the guidelines instilled on these people that created the conflict with themselves.
But I think the teacher could be the face of the government and the face of the protagonist. Meanwhile, there was no face of the antagonist in The Baby.
Yeah. So definitely they had very different resolutions at the end. Like, obviously 2 + 2 = 5, like the resolution was the kid died and he inspired others in the class to be silent, like opposers of the government. And in the Baby, there really wasn't, like, we were left guessing, like, are her parents ever going to find out? Like, what is she going to do? Is she going to be honest with them in the future? Like, we were all left guessing about what was going to happen with her. And I think that was, although they were tackling the same issues on oppression and what are you going to do about oppression, we were left more on, like a personal, like, on the right foot with Baby, I think, The Baby. Because I think it made us think deeply about the issues more than the other one did. So that also leads into talking a little about the arcs that were present in both of them. Do you want to talk about the arcs?
Yeah, so we thought that there was like a clear arc kind of in 2 + 2 = 5, and like how you see, like we've talked about earlier, the internal conflict of the boy and how he is able to like stand up and like go against, and how he then becomes kind of seen as like a martyr kind of for the rest of the boys in there. How it shows like with the resolution, the one boy like writes 2 + 2 = 5, and then he like scratches it out, kind of like the silent resistance. But we didn't really feel like we saw as much of an arc in the baby. I don't know. For me, I just think that like kind of resonated with the open-ended resolution, and just like helped make it more realistic. Of like what would happen in everyday lives when you're exposed to like that kind of system.
Like in everyday life, like you're not gonna be the hero, and you're not gonna like sacrifice yourself and your well-being for like what you believe is right. And
you're
that was
do what
really
you need to do to get by, which is what the baby does.
Yeah,
that's
she
very realistic.
Like, although she's not, we're rooting for her because we feel for her and the pain that she's going through. Like, she doesn't stand up for herself. She's not like, well, you know, you're right. Like, I should be able to tell my parents about this, and she doesn't do it. She's internally coming to terms with the fact that she can't keep that baby hidden forever. And it's just way more real and way more powerful in explaining like the real situation in Iran, because no child, or like even no person, I think, would go up to somebody saying 2 + 2 = 5 and knowing that they're going to get killed, like completely just ignore that. It's just more of like made up and less believable. And I think that although there was like a very distinct arc, like he was like introduced to this new rule, he said, no, that's not right, to himself. He's like, I'm going to do something about it, does something about it, suffers the consequences. He went through this arc, but I don't think that meant it was a better movie than The Baby, because the lack of arc